Welcome to NHA Today, where we explore the path to lasting health and fulfillment through a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Each week, we bring you real conversations with doctors, health experts, and everyday individuals who've transformed their lives through food, mindset, and community. This is NHA Today, powered by the National Health Association.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NHA podcast. I am your guest host, Maxime Sigouin, founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching. And today I am joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Robert Cheeke. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maxime. It's great to be here and also great to be part of the NHA. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for us to talk about today's topic, which is going to be all things fitness. I think you and I kind of identified there's a little bit of a gap in the whole food plant-based world where not a lot of people were talking about resistance training, which brings on the benefits of fighting sarcopenia, fighting osteoporosis. And when we think of building muscle and being really fit, we think of Robert Cheeke. So I was like, we need to have Robert and go in depth today.
Well, I appreciate you thinking of me. And there you have it right there. Plant-based for 30 years and still going strong. So I'm here to hopefully answer as many questions I can about building muscle on a plant-based diet, since I've been doing it successfully now for 3 decades. And even at age 45, I just hit my personal best lift in a lower body exercise just last week. So yeah, I'm still going strong and excited to chat today.
Well, incredible. So yeah, we'll cover a different topic. I definitely want to do misconceptions. But I'd love to start off with, how has working out and fitness changed for you over the course of the past 30 years? Was working out, on a vegan diet at the age of, in 20s and your 30s and now in your 40s? Have you had to make any adjustments to your training regimen to continue to see results?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just how our body adapts over time. There's general wear and tear from those enthusiastic weight training years of my 20s and early 30s and being a competitive bodybuilder and putting a lot of stress on joints and tendons and ligaments through heavy lifting. But now, now my goal is still strength, still fitness, but also longevity. And so I focus on that. I warm up for longer periods of time. I might stretch quite a bit more than I used to. I try to have higher repetitions and a range of motion that is full and deep. And so I get a nice stretch to my muscles. And I really want to prevent injuries, because as a longtime competitive athlete in numerous sports, I've had my share of injuries, like all athletes do. And now, I'm just a little bit more careful. I use machines and cables, body weight exercises, and dumbbell and barbell free weight exercises. But certainly, if I had to say it really succinctly, it's more time warming up, more time cooling down, and focusing on specific long-term longevity goals rather than just trying to get, as big and strong as possible, as fast as possible.
Yeah, I 100% agree with, it takes longer to warm up and you need a little bit longer of a cool down to stretch after, so you're able to feel good for the next session, whatever may be the next day or 2 days after. So when you were training for bodybuilding, we can kind of tie that to, training for a sport. So you're training more for performance. So aesthetically, you were trying to build your body a specific way. And we both know that if you're trying to compete at a higher level, it does require you to push your body way harder than someone that is just looking to achieve longevity benefits, that is just looking to kind of be healthier, be in shape, and have more strength. How has that mindset shift been for you, from training for peak performance to now we're training to, like, I want to train so that I feel good, I feel strong, I look great, and that my joints don't hurt?
Yeah. Well, you know what it is, Maxim? And this is a positive thing, not a negative thing. It's coming to a place of acceptance. It's coming to full acceptance of what I am capable of right now. And I'm as strong as I've ever been. Don't get me wrong. I'm as strong as I've ever been, but I just have this heightened awareness that, if I get injured now, I'm closer to age 50 than I am to age 40. It may take longer to recover. I don't need to prove anything to anybody else. That's part of the mindset as well. There's social media pressure, there's comparison pressure, there's all these external factors that try to get you to constantly compare yourself to someone else's journey, even though you have no idea what their priorities are, what their journey is, or where they are in that process. And that's where I've come to a place of acceptance that I'm doing this for me. I'm doing it for me. I'm still trying to lead by example and represent the plant-based fitness community in a positive way, but I'm not trying to be somebody else like I used to. I always wanted to compare myself to some other bodybuilder or to some other influencer type or public persona. Now I've come to this place of acceptance to just be me and go along this particular path that I've chosen, and to be consistent and to set a positive example, to achieve desired results, and to just keep showing up day after day and watch how actions compound and how achievements compound and success compounds and progress compounds, and use that as motivation to keep going when there's so many reasons to just stop, to say, oh, I'm never going to be as big or strong as that other person or as popular as that other person. Why bother? But I remove those expectations. I remove those comparisons. And so it's much more holistic, my approach these days.
Yeah, it sounds like the intention behind the action of working out has shifted. And from what I'm hearing from you and from my own experience, it makes it more enjoyable to know that you're exercising because you want to feel good, because you want to look a certain way. Because if you're doing it from a place of, I should look this way because society tells me, or there's pressure from people around you, from your community, it makes it not as fun, and you're not as motivated to go to the gym and exercise. You're not as motivated to do the strength training compared to if it's coming from this internal place of, I'm doing this for me because I want to feel good. I don't want my body to be a limitation to me living my best life as I get older.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Maxim, there was a time when it was a burden for me to exercise. It was a chore for me to go show up at the gym because the expectations of carrying this weight on my shoulders, and I'm talking decades ago, as one of the only well-known plant-based athletes in the world, especially in the sport of bodybuilding, I really did carry a burden. I mean, I was on magazine covers and in newspapers and in documentaries and all over the internet, and it actually wore on me. I would sometimes go to the gym and I really disliked being there. It just felt like so much pressure and I couldn't have fun. Now, you know what, Maxim? I'm having fun and I'm even stronger than I've ever been at this stage in my mid 40s. And it's probably because it has been more enjoyable. I can feel more free. I'm not worrying about being judged by how much weight I'm lifting or how I look. I'm not competing in sports right now. I'm training for the fun of it, for the joy of it, for the longevity of it, for the health of it. And for me, that up here, that mindset piece has been crucial. I mean, even just before we're recording in the afternoon, I'm already at 10,000 steps today, and I'm probably going to end up with 20,000. Not because I have to, not because it's some arbitrary number that society tells me I need to hit, but because I've been on multiple dog walks today. I've been out walking in the sun. I went out shopping at the store and chose to take the long way, a couple blocks back to my car, carrying groceries because it was sunny and a nice day. These are conscious choices that I'm making. Before it was, we have 1,440 minutes every day. I would try to cram in my hardcore training and get as much of that done as I can, and then get back to posting on the internet about how strong I am or something like that. And maybe it's maturity, who knows? but there is definitely,
I think there's an element of that.
yeah, there's an element. There's a difference between being 25 and being 45. But also I think there's a low pressure joy aspect of movement for the sake of movement, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, and joyful movements like playing sports or just going on a walk on a nice day.
Yeah. Well, I remember you and I and Karen and my wife, Ivy, we were on the cruise together, and we're like at the bottom of the level, like, oh, okay, we got to go to the top. We're going to go to the pool or go play some basketball. And Robert's like, all right, let's grab the stairs. So there's not even an ounce of hesitation we should grab the elevator. It was always the stairs. That was the first thing you went to. And sometimes you told people, it's like, hey, you can grab it if you want to. I'll meet you at the top. But you always made sure that you grab the stairs and that you're staying active.
Right. And some of those days, Maxim, I walked 30,000 steps. I covered 15 miles in a day. And climbing stairs, it helps strengthen our legs, our bone density, our calves, hamstrings, quads, glutes, our core. It's good for our heart and our lungs and for endurance and circulation and everything. Why not? I try to never see the inside of an elevator whenever possible, even like we are on this big vegan cruise that's 19 decks tall. I'm still going to take the stairs every single time without exception, because that's just part of the ingrained perspective that I have of choosing movement first. Or maybe it's even deeper than that. It's choosing the hard thing because I know the hard thing is going to be the more beneficial thing. And I do that all the time. In fact, I'll be doing that later today when I walk another 10,000 steps throughout the rest of my afternoon and evening, because it's a conscious choice to say, I want to experience these benefits of mood enhancing, of idea creation, of mental clarity, of time by myself for introspection and reflection. Like these are often as important as dumbbell curls and squats. This time in our own head to think and be creative. And I really enjoyed that aspect of exercise too.
Yeah. So I want to make the distinction for people. When we say exercise, we're talking about overall movement. So again, it could be grabbing the stairs. It could be going out for a walk with the dogs. It could be doing some form of, Pilates, yoga, strength training, a spin class, or things like that. With Robert, a little bit later in the conversation, I want to dive deeper into the component of strength training, because I think it's a part that as people start to get older, and I think the studies show that as early as in your 30s, you start to lose lean muscle tissue, right? So sarcopenia, basically, as early as in your 30s. So strength training is one of those things that can combat that. So from what you shared, Robert, like we kind of covered the before we even get to the gym, which is getting in the right mindset, setting the intention of why we want to do this for ourselves to get better, not to impress other people, not to look a certain way, which we all know that once we get to that place, we never really get happy. We're like, if I'm just a little bit fitter, if I'm just a little bit more muscle, and we never really end up getting there. So I love to talk about the next step of the process, which is where I think a lot of people struggle, which is the headspace of getting to the gym. It's like, okay, we have the intention, we want to get better. And then there's some of those days where you feel phenomenal. It's sunny outside. You're like, yeah, we'll go do a workout today. We'll eat healthy food. But then there's going to be those days, like you shared earlier, where you don't want to go and work out. You're tired. Body's achy a little bit. Maybe it's gray and rainy outside, depending on where you live. So how do you navigate these days of, I don't want to work out, I don't feel like working out?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And in fact, I saw an online meme just 2 days ago that said it showed like the hardest part of success or achievement. And it was someone at the start line. That was the image. It was image of someone at the starting line. Because how do you get started? It's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to break into a new habit. And I know it's cliche to even say, well, go back to your why. Why does it matter to you? Why does it compel you to want to do this? What will your future self thank you for by showing up today, and all those types of things? That's all good. That's all helpful. But what I found to be helpful is to have structure. Just like you might take certain vitamins or supplements daily, and you have the vitamin container the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all throughout the week, and you look at it and it's a reminder to, oh yeah, I need to take my B12 and vitamin D if that's what you're doing, or whatever it is. It's creating structure and a system that sets you up for success. And so that's what I think is an important part. So it's setting some sort of initial goal of how many days a week you want to exercise, and then check those boxes. Hold yourself accountable, and you'd be surprised. Just the act of showing up and completing the workout and being able to check that box is sometimes just as fulfilling as the exercise itself, because you're holding yourself accountable. You're honoring your commitment. You are putting yourself in a position to adapt and improve over time, because consistency leads to adaptation, which leads to improvement, which leads to success. It's a connect the dots kind of game. And so
compounds,
if you can create structure and then fulfill those obligations, whether it's a certain amount of steps per day, amount of sleep to get at night, amount of water you aim to consume, the amount of days you get to the gym, and check those boxes along the way, and you'll feel this sense of accomplishment psychologically and mentally, but all along the way, you'll also be physically setting yourself up for adaptation and improvement. And that's where the motivation comes from. The motivation doesn't come from the beginning, where I've got to get myself all fired up and pumped up. Motivation comes from seeing the results of your consistent hard work and not wanting to let go of that, right? Wanting to keep that going, keep momentum going. So have some goals, put some meaning behind them, and show up day after day so that you can see the results you're looking for, and that will help keep you going.
Yeah, there's an element of shaping your new identity that comes from like those habits and kind of checking off and proving to yourself that you are someone that does the things that they say that they're going to do. I don't know for you, I know everyone has kind of their own little process, but for someone that works in the fitness industry, that's been an athlete pretty much my whole life, and for yourself, there's a lot of days where I don't want to work out. People think that it's easier because you've been in this world and you've been an athlete, you're fit all the time. There's many days where you're sore, you're tired, you don't want to do another workout. You much rather stay in bed or sit on the couch and just eat food and relax. To me, during those times, I'll be honest with you, I never think of my why during those times. The main thing that I think of is my identity that I've shaped for myself, which is I pride myself in being someone that does the thing that they say that they're going to do. So if I'm sitting on a couch not wanting to go and work out, it bugs me that I'm lying to myself because I said that I would do it. And so what really happens is I sit on the couch until it eats me so much that I get up and I go to the gym. Like I just can't sit with the fact that I'd be lying to myself that I said that I would do it and I didn't do it. And so I know some people thinking about the why works. Some people think about identity. I used to trick myself and just grab a coffee. That way I knew that if I didn't work out, I'd have too much energy and I couldn't sleep. So then that would force me to go to the gym. So I'm curious to know, like, what are your strategies when you're sitting on the couch and you're like, I don't want to go and do this workout today. Like, how do you get yourself to go?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I mean, that's why New Year's resolutions don't work for most people. They end after 2.5 weeks. And we tend to, in our society, have the same New Year's resolution for 10 consecutive years before we decide that maybe this isn't for me. And that's because we often lack that starting discipline, that why, that focus, that consistency, whatever it is. And so for me, I don't always think about my why either. That doesn't make me stop in my tracks and reflect inward and have this discussion with myself.
This epiphany.
For me, what it is I'm really big on consistency. I've often said that, maybe aside from the word love, consistency is the most important word in the world. That's how you do anything. It's how you learn a language.
Yeah.
It's how you learn a skill. That's how you educate yourself. That's how you build relationships. It's how you do anything. It's how you grow, is through consistent actions, no matter what it is. That's, we're the sum of our actions, our thoughts, our behaviors, our habits. And so I reflect on that I've shown up all these days and put in hard work, even when it was difficult. And I don't want to let go of that by, skipping today's workout, if it's not a planned rest day, that is, of course, or deliberately missing this or prioritizing something else, because I realize that I've already put in a lot of work. That's why getting sick is so frustrating. I've had COVID a couple times. I've had RSV. These things happen. Most of us have had one of these illnesses in the last few years, the flu, something major. And it's like, man, I was so consistent. I put in all this work, and now my body has to take a break because of an illness. And I don't want to have that break be because of my own lack of desire or lack of structure or lack of consistency or lack of discipline. I look at, I'm always connecting the dots, oftentimes years in advance, whether that's writing a New York Times bestselling book, which I predicted years before I ever did it, or becoming a champion bodybuilder, which I predicted years before I ever did it, or whatever it is that I'm doing. I realize that my actions today impact tomorrow, but they also impact a week from now, and a month from now, and a year from now, and 5 years from now, because I'm laying the foundation where I'm someone who is becoming the person who is consistent, and becoming the person who shows up, becoming the person who puts in the work. And so I remind myself of that. It's kind of a little bit of a self-talk. Robert, are you going to, skip this or make poor nutritional choices or do these other things? Or are you going to be the person that's going to have positive actions compound and benefit 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And so that's what I focus on.
Yeah. And I think what you said is true. Like if you think of a few months ahead from now, if you're fit and healthy, it is a reflection of the actions that you took, that you're taking right now in your life. So if you're in a moment where things aren't that great, you're feeling a little bit puffy, potentially not the greatest in shape, it's not necessarily a reflection of actions right now. It could be of what you've been doing for the past 2 to 3 months. And so the best way to have a greater future is to start today and start to make some of those changes. And you talked about New Year's resolutions earlier. See, like a lot of people, we hear that often. People have a lot of starting power. Like January 1st is this very magical day for a lot of people. There's an injection of motivation or energy that comes from the universe, if you want to put it that way. But a lot of people struggle with staying power. So they get started, they're real excited, and then the excitement fades and like, wow, this is really boring. This hurts. I'm sore. I'm hungry. I really want this food, but I should have this food. And that's kind of when a lot of people fall off. You mentioned 2.5 weeks. Like we all know, you and I, when we go to the gym in January, about this second week into it, it gets really busy and then it just really dies down. Like all the machines are taken, you got to wait for everything. And then it just dies down and the gym is empty again. So I'm happy we covered some of those strategies to help to get people to the gym in the first place. Now, I love to cover the 3 segments of once you get to the gym, right? The warm up, the workout, and the cool down. But before we do that, I would love for you to share, and I'll jump in as well. Why is it important to strength train if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? Why is it so important? And why do people like us are preaching from top of the mountain that everyone should be doing some form of resistance training?
Absolutely. Why is strength training or weight training so important? Because this is how you build your skeletal muscle structure. This is how you put on lean muscle. This is an effective way to burn fat, especially unwanted fat. This is a way to build character and strength. It's a way to prevent injuries by having strong muscles and joints and tendons. It's a way to create discipline within yourself and character, to enhance mood, to challenge yourself, to push yourself to do things you didn't think were possible, or that you didn't think were capable of. It's a great way to build bone density and prevent injuries from falls and things like that many people, you know, are susceptible
Suffer from
to
as they get older.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to combat sarcopenia, you know, age-related muscle loss. It's a way to create consistent habits, even build community as a social aspect. So there's so many different things. So we can talk about the core fundamentals of it's important to build muscle, build bone density, prevent injuries, strengthen tendons, ligaments, and all that stuff through resistance training over time, burning fat efficiently. But there's so many other things too, from the social aspect, from the motivational aspect, from the personal pride and accomplishment aspect. So it's really a multifaceted thing, but it also just happens to be, the best way to create this body composition of reducing unwanted body fat, building desired muscle, and kind of looking and feeling a certain way that is also functional in every sport and physical behavior that we can imagine, from walking and hiking to cycling, running, and swimming. It's beneficial to all of those things, from team sports, basketball, soccer, football, baseball, to your individual physical activities that you might do, like dance or tennis or something else that you enjoy. It has almost a never-ending list of benefits, including just the feel-good aspect of I'm getting stronger, and that makes me feel good. I naturally feel good about myself and what I'm able to accomplish when I get to the gym, and I'm not intimidated. I feel confident. These are all benefits, but they also lead to, they're closely tied to longevity and the prevention of injuries, especially during things like falls. And so I think they're undoubtedly important.
Yeah, I love to talk about some of the nuances of the things that you shared. So just for the people listening, when we talk about resistance training, it could be with, going to a gym like Robert and I will do and lift some weights. It could be using resistance band just to get started. It could be being in your living room, lifting a reusable grocery bag with some cans of beans in it. Basically, it's any form of resistance against gravity, right? Putting some tension on the muscle is what we'll kind of identify as resistance training. You mentioned, osteoporosis and kind of the building of bone density, extremely important as you get older. As you know, Robert, we coach people like 50 to 86, which Robert's in the program. He's not over 50, but we're preparing Robert for that. Robert's in the program getting great results. But that bone density is important because, like you said, if someone falls, if you fall in your 20s, you'll heal a lot faster than if you fall in your 60s. And so again, falling might happen, life does happen, but can you have stronger bones to reduce the fact that they may break, right? That's extremely beneficial. And in terms of building muscle, I want to address the nuances for the men and women that are going to be listening to the episode. I'm not referring to looking like the Hulk or Arnold. You can have, good amount of lean muscle tissue, enjoy great quality of life without having to look like you could be on a bodybuilding magazine cover. Because I know a lot of women tend to be scared of resistance training for those two reasons. I don't want to look too bulky, and I'm afraid of getting injured, which is another one that we need to address.
Yeah. Right. One thing I do want to bring up, just because I saw this meme yesterday, I posted on Instagram. I know I need to stay away from these memes, but it was.
I was going to say, you're watching a lot of memes.
I know. Just online, promoting my books and promoting upcoming speaking tours. And I see things. It's this thing jumped out at me. I'd be curious to your thoughts, because you kind of mentioned this. There's this fear of getting too muscular, right? And so the quote says something, I just posted yesterday. I don't have it maybe fully memorized, but it's something along the lines of, the fear of getting too muscular is the fitness equivalent to the fear of accidentally becoming a billionaire. It is so hard to get super muscular. I mean, I've dedicated my life to it for decades. And I'm still not that, not that big, I'm in pretty good shape.
Like you have a great physique, but you're not like, for example, like the Mr. Olympia, the people that compete that are enhanced at that high of a level. Yeah, it doesn't, like you said, you don't become a billionaire by accident.
Right. And so you're not going to get super muscular by accident. There are people by the millions who are dedicating their lives, especially people, young men with high levels of testosterone and enthusiasm and energy and all these things in their favor, and they still struggle to do it. So that's one of my messages to anybody that listen. Weight training is just one of the most beneficial things you can do for your body, period. And you're not going to get too muscular, whether you're a man or woman, unless you are training at a very elite level, have tremendous genetics, and you're eating a calorie surplus, probably using lots of different sports supplements, and you're in the gym, 5 or 6 days a week as a really dedicated athlete, training for hours a day, and your life revolves around it. But for the rest of us, we can simply incorporate weight training into our lives for 45 minutes a day, 4 days a week, something like that. It's a great place to start and build.
Yeah, even 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Like that's like, you can get great results off of that just to get started.
Especially if you haven't done a lot of resistance training. Your body's going to adapt quickly, right? Your body's going to respond quickly, just like you will if you are running for the first time. You adapt really quickly compared to someone who's been doing it for years and years and years, where they only have small incremental improvements over time. When you're brand new to something, you're really going to see adaptation quickly, which is strange because that seems like that would be in favor of New Year's resolutions sticking when people see progress in those first couple of weeks. But, routine gets, old habits come back, routine gets disrupted and all of that. But I just want to make that point that for men and women alike, I don't think a fear of getting too muscular is going to be a realistic outcome for anyone, knowing that so many of us have dedicated so many years to trying to do that and just discovering how difficult it is. But what you can do, what all of us can do, is to strengthen our muscles, tone our bodies, reduce body fat, increase our strength and endurance and aerobic capacity, reduce our risk of injury, increase our mood. That should be enough to get us to want to get in the gym and enjoy the process of getting stronger. See how the weights get bigger over time. Feel how the soreness can actually be, in a weird way, cathartic or therapeutic, that says, wow, I really tested myself. I pushed myself to a new limit that I just wasn't used to when I didn't step out my comfort zone until now. And now I know what it feels like to put myself in a position to adapt and improve with increased muscle mass, increased muscle size, decreased body fat. And so I encourage people to find the activities that are most enjoyable. Like you said, Maxim, they can be body weight exercises, air squats, lunges, push-ups, crunches, planks, find a pull-up bar and do pull-ups, all these types of things, dips on a bench, or discover what dumbbells and machines and cables can do for you, or go to a gym and find out about all these different types of machines and equipment that are designed to build your body in a very effective and impactful way, and give it a try and see how you improve week after week, and see if that brings a level of joy and satisfaction as you improve along the way.
And there's that feeling of strength that you get to walk around with, that people that work out consistently, like, the feeling and you love the feeling, that it's not that soreness, tightness, strength that you walk around like you're strong, you're solid. I was just speaking with my wife, and she was in the kitchen yesterday, and we were talking, and she was like flexing her bicep, and she was like, "Oh, look, I can see a little bump." And then she told me, "I walk around and I feel so strong and in control of my body. Is that what it's like to work out consistently?" I was like, "Absolutely. It's the best feeling in the world. Once your muscles are connected from working out consistently and you feel that internal strength, you get addicted to the feeling. People that feel strong love to feel strong, and that's why they continue strength training." Um, and there's an element we talked about, not wanting to get too bulky. You've competed in bodybuilding, as much as me that there's an illusion component to it. When you reduce the amount of body fat that you have on your body, it does make your muscles look bigger. It does make them stick out more. So it's not necessarily about having to pack on 40 pounds of extra muscle to look a certain way. You can decrease the amount of body fat that you have on you, and it's going to make you look fitter. It is going to make you look stronger. Do you want to talk about a little bit that illusion component?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have many great examples. So I weigh about 200 pounds. I'm down 10 pounds since I started the Fit Vegan coaching program just a few months ago. So that's been good. But I tend to be, often around 200 or 210 pounds. But my friend was competing in bodybuilding. He was competing last year, and he looked far more muscular than me. We're the exact same height, but he weighed about 165 pounds. I was carrying around 45 to 50 pounds more body weight at probably around 210 or 215 pounds. And he was 165 and he looked more muscular because he was a competitive bodybuilder and I was not. I've been retired for years. And so his body fat was much lower. And so it made the muscles and muscle definition stand out that much more. And so you see it in movies, in Hollywood, and in acting all the time, whether it's what's his name, Hugh Jackman and Wolverine. It's trimming down, unless you're going to be, try to be like The Rock, which none of us have the genetics to do.
No,
it's and his and his stack of supplements, but
it has help.
Yeah, he's got some things that help him out there, but. Other actors, Brad Pitt back in his day of being really fit on set, it's all about leaning out. When you reduce body fat, you just look fitter, more muscular, leaner. And I know I've done this many times, even since retiring from competitive bodybuilding. Even when I saw you, last year or year and a half ago, when I was pretty light, I dropped a bunch of body weight. Then I put 20 pounds back on, which is why I'm now losing it again in a more sustainable way in the program. But that's the key. That's the key to the image of what our physiques look like. Anytime we can reduce body fat, and most of us do carry around more body fat than we often need. If we can reduce body fat, we do look leaner, but also we feel lighter. We're more capable of doing things like taking the stairs, going on long hikes or long walks, having greater endurance. It's just less stress on our organs, less stress on our joints, less stress on our body. But a lot of it is an illusion. Not only that, if we're being totally transparent, I can look like I'm in awesome shape when I take 40 photos in the mirror and pick the best one with nice lighting and a good tan.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, if you saw me on the street, I don't look maybe that special, but when I am trying to have this comparison mindset with the rest of the fitness people on the internet world, then I'm going to get the best lighting. I'm going to flex as hard as I can and try to find a photo that's not blurry from me shaking so much from flexing so hard and post that one and put my best foot forward, when that's not really me the rest of the day in reality. Yeah. And so fitness often is an illusion, but one thing that we can't lie about is the internal aspect, our internal health, how we are treating our body through consistent exercise, through a good, clean, plant-based diet, all of those things, that has reflections in our health, in our blood work, in our lab results, in our longevity, regardless of how we look on the outside. I think focusing on the internal health and fitness is fundamentally more important.
Yeah. And so talking about decreasing that amount of body fat, obviously there's a point where it becomes unhealthy when you're too lean and you can't sustain that for a long period of time. But I want to talk about the whole cardio versus strength training debate as a tool for fat loss, for body recomposition. So it's very prominent in society that people think that cardio is going to be the way to lose as much fat as possible. But you and I know that the more lean muscle tissue you have on your body, the more your body needs calories in order to maintain. So you're kind of increasing your metabolism, your caloric need per day. So you get to eat more food and you become a more efficient fat burning machine through doing strength training. And then cardio can be used as a tool. But what a lot of people do is they'll just do cardio, which to an extent where they start to burn through lean muscle tissue, and then they become less efficient of a fat burning machine, and they have less lean muscle tissue. And then combine that with you're over 50, you're losing lean muscle tissue because you're over 50, plus you're just doing a ton of cardio, so you're losing even more lean muscle tissue, and then you're wondering why your metabolism is slow, right? People have it reversed. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you hit the nail on the head there, that the more lean muscle you have, the more effective you are at burning fat. And also, let's just look at what cardiovascular exercise is. It's something that is, it burns calories, but not at the rate that you might expect. And so you're burning these calories, and it takes a long time. You may have to be on the treadmill for an hour, or do some sort of jogging, running, walking for an hour and a half, just to offset the calories of,
one cookie.
Yeah, a small amount of food. But what happens is when you do that amount of exercise, 90 minutes, 2 hours, just doing whatever you can to burn off, this guilt with your, relationship with food, you get hungry afterwards. You can't walk for 2 hours. Even if it's not running, if you just walk for 2 hours, you're pretty hungry afterwards. So then you eat all the calories back that you just spent running and burning off on the treadmill and sweating for hours. And so that's one of the reasons why you fundamentally, mathematically can't outwork a bad diet. There's too many calories in concentrated, ultra processed foods. That's just the way it is. And if you try to out exercise that, you're just going to end up eating more and more and more because you're very hungry after that. And like you said, you end up eating up muscle. You burn muscle doing all this cardio, not just fat. You get tired and fatigued and all these other things. Where if you can just do the power building weight training exercise and become a more efficient fat burning machine 24/7 while you're gaining strength, while you're gaining muscle, while you're reducing body fat, while you're gaining confidence, while you're having fun, while you're doing it in an efficient 40-minute block of time, or whatever your block of time in the gym is, that's just a mathematical formula that's superior than trying to outrun your bad habits.
Yeah. So let's talk about the strength training of how we can become more efficient fat burning machine and increase our metabolism. So let's break it down for the 3 component, and we can go one by one. So let's talk about warm up. Why is warm up important, and how do you warm up for your strength training sessions?
Yeah, I can tell you why it's important. I've injured my shoulder multiple times.
Yep.
I've injured my back. I've injured other muscle groups. When you get in and try to do too much too fast, you have to get blood flow going to those areas. That's why we call it a warm up. You bring blood to an area. It brings heat. It brings warmth. It brings circulation. It warms up those areas by increasing circulation, and therefore decreases the likelihood of injury. That's why we always talk about injuries often happen to cold muscles. You can think of it as like elastic bands, or there's all kinds of analogies that people use about what it's like to put stress on, like pieces of spaghetti that are just going to snap, or something like an elastic rubber band that's flexible and pliable, and it's been warmed up and it has good range of motion and all of this kind of stuff. That's fundamentally the core reason why, for me, it's so easy to get injured. It's like if I just get in this, we've been sitting here, I've been having pretty good posture, I feel pretty good about it, but we've been sitting here talking for 40 minutes. If I get up and just try to sprint for 100 meters or 200 meters, let's say, as fast as I can, that's probably a recipe for disaster for my hamstring, right? I'm probably going to hurt myself.
And hip flexors.
What's that?
And hip flexors as well.
Yeah, sure.
From sitting for that long.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. An injury is just waiting to happen. When you that's why it happens when you step off a sidewalk. You're texting while you're walking, and you fall off a sidewalk. Your body's not used to it. It hasn't warmed up for that. You get out of a car, you step wrong. Like, these things happen. These acute injuries. No way I could go sprint at full speed right now without first walking, jogging, doing some stretching for those particular movements, some ballistic stretching, range of motion work, and then running a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, and then a full-on sprint. The same thing happens in the gym. I mean, look at some of the joints we're talking about. Shoulder joint, it moves so many different directions. Our knees, our hips, our ankles, if we don't increase circulation, bring warmth, bring blood, bring nutrients to these areas, that's going to be problematic. And I've been there more times than I'd like to admit. And also, this might surprise you, might surprise some listeners, but it's true. I exercise 99% of the time. 99 out of 100 workouts, you will see me in a hooded sweatshirt and pants when I exercise in the gym.
Yeah.
Now, I realize that's not for everybody. Some people sweat a lot. They like to wear a tank top and shorts. That's fine. Not for me. I want the extra protection of warmth. I have a very hard time training with cold muscles in the gym. Mm-hmm. A few exceptions are when I've trained with you at the world's most famous gym at Venice Gold's, where you're there to be out in the sun. You're training outside. You might wear a tank top or t-shirt for photos or to get vitamin D. But traditionally, I'm the guy, summertime, it doesn't matter. It could be 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I'm in the gym with a sweatshirt on and pants, because at my age, closer to 50 than I am to 40, I want to have warm muscles all the time. And so I do. And I lift, and I'm very strong. I'm very capable. And I've had a few little issues, like with my shoulder, as a result of not warming up properly. But aside from that, I've been good because of that approach. And so it also gets your muscles adapted to the stress that they're about to be engaged in or put under. Yeah. So like, you might do push-ups to warm up on a day that you're training chest and doing bench press, coming up and later on in the workout. Just like you might do air squats, these body weight squats to warm up on a day, or jogging or running upstairs on a day that you're training legs. You want to engage those muscles that you will be using specifically in that workout to get the elasticity going, get them ready to take on that workload. And that's going to help prevent injuries, but also give you more range of motion, more flexibility, and allow you to ultimately lift heavier, do more repetitions, and get stronger, which is what you're there to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I'll chime in a little bit on the warm up, and then we can move to the main set. But You said a lot of great analogies in there. Basically, for people listening, I'll give some kind of numbers and tangible of what it would look like or feel like when they're doing a warm up. So you talked about like an uncooked spaghetti and how easily it would break. That's the equivalent of your muscle going into a workout cold versus an elastic band, basically, where the muscle is stretchy and is able to take the load. There's a lot of people that are either working out first thing in the morning. So talk about being immobile for maybe 8 hours a night, sleeping and then just going up and lifting some weights, or they've been working all day and they're working out in the evening and they've been sitting in a chair all day. So the mobility is not necessarily there. And then as for the joints, you mentioned to kind of lubricate those joints. So for people listening, when you're doing a warm up, you're doing kind of like the push-ups and you're walking up the stairs, preparing for a leg workout, your body secretes something called synovial fluids in your joints. So that's kind of like WD-40 for your joints before you go in and work out. And you want to lubricate that so that there's less risk of injury when you're doing the exercise. You talked about priming the nervous system. So if you're doing bench press, warming up with something lighter like a push-up, and I think that's an important component, I like to keep my warm-up under a 5 RPE, so the rate of perceived exertion. So I like to keep it under 5. So pretty again, we're doing some movement, but doing it pretty light, because I've seen people go, I'm going to warm up. I'm going to sprint for 20 minutes on a treadmill. That's my warm-up. Then I'm going to go and work out. They get injured from sprinting for 20 minutes on the treadmill and doing a full cardio session before. So making sure that you keep it actually light than actually a warm-up. It's not a workout before the workout. It's to prep you for the workout. So now going to the main set, the actual workout of strength training. I'm going to start off with the big one that a lot of people have a fear of, which is a fear of getting injured when they're going to be strength training. Now, we know they're going to be warming up, but we also know that, again, improper form, ego lifting can kind of come into way. So do you mind addressing some of these components that would cause people to be doubtful of doing more strength training?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I do exactly what you were just describing. If let's just say bench press, maybe I'll even do some of that today. Who knows? What I do, and this might sound extreme, but it's to your point of the percentage of exertion. I will do about 40 repetitions with a light weight. I mean, most people are used to 8 to 12 reps, right? 8 to 12 reps per set.
Yeah.
For muscle building, for general. And why am I doing 40? Well, because I'm just getting started. I want to make sure my chest, my shoulders, my triceps, everything is ready to go before I put on a heavy workload. And I might actually do multiple sets of about 40 reps. Then I can go in with confidence and get into my working sets where I'll do 12 or 15 reps. Then I'll add more weight and do another set of maybe 8 to 10 repetitions, add a little bit more weight, maybe get down all the way to 6 to 8 repetitions. You don't really need to go below 6 unless you're kind of a power lifter or you're trying to get a 1 rep max or you're doing something very specific. And so I always go in increments. Even when I move, let's say I'm doing bench press, but now I'm going over to a different chest exercise. Maybe it's cable flies, bringing cables in front across your chest. I'm still oftentimes going to go back to those 30 or 40 repetitions for my first set or two, because it's a totally different movement. Instead of palms facing out and pushing up, now my palms are facing each other and my hands are going across my face to come to the middle on this chest fly. It's a totally different movement. And I want to make sure my body is ready for that. Once I've done a couple of those exercises, and everyone's different, I like to do closer to 4 to 5 sets. I mean, some people might do 3 sets for a given exercise. I like a little bit higher volume myself, personal preference. So I'll probably do about 5 sets. Now, once I'm 2 or 3 exercises into the full workout, I'm not doing 40 reps on the next thing because I'm already warmed up all these different angles. I've warmed up with the bench press. Now I've done the flies. Now if I do an incline movement, a decline movement, dumbbells, barbells, cables, I'm already warmed up sufficiently because I'm now 25 minutes into the workout. So at that point, I go right into my working sets, right into 12 reps, right into 10 reps, 8, 6, and move on to the next exercise. And if you go in that kind of process, that sort of system or trajectory of just starting a little bit higher reps at first, so your body is used to the movement, add a little more weight, increase the resistance, the reps naturally go down because you can't lift as much with more weight, and you just get in this really nice progression. And that's just what I what I've enjoyed doing for the last 25 or 30 years or so. And that's a way that I create this almost like this pyramid of high reps on the bottom as the foundation. And I work my way up. And so I don't get injured that way. And I'll tell you, Maxim, most of my injuries have come when I've been in a hurry and I skip my foundation of a first set of 30 or 40 reps. I jump right into it, and there goes my shoulder. There goes my knee. There goes my back, because I didn't listen and respect my body's needs to warm up. And that's when that happens. Otherwise, I'm good, and I've been doing it for a long time. When I build up that capacity to take on the workload throughout the duration of the workout.
Yeah, the warm up is something that no one should rush. If you're in a time crunch, personally, what I do, if I'm in a time crunch, I'm not rushing to warm up. I'd rather do shorter rests in between my sets and do the workout than to rush a warm up. Because rushing a warm up is just increases your chances of getting injured, right? Again, we're about to put our body through some stress. So yeah, never rush a warm up. And one thing I forgot to mention, you talked about stretching earlier. Don't do static stretching before a workout. You want to do dynamic stretching. So think of like arm swings and leg swings and things like that. Not just like reaching down and touching your toes. You're basically pulling on a cold, uncooked spaghetti, basically, right? Yeah. You need to warm it up with like light, gentle movement. For the component of like injury and ego lifting and all those things, I think, the warm up plays a big part, but form is such a big component of it. And I think a lot of people think that if they go heavier, it's going to be better and produce more results, right? It's that more is better type of mentality. But I think people miss the point that the body always finds the path of least resistance. You and I have squatted pretty heavy. I don't squat heavy anymore, but we've squatted pretty heavy before. And when your legs are struggling, your knees kind of buckle in. They kind of go inside and then do this really weird thing to trying to get your body to stand up. And that's usually when injuries occur. So how do you navigate, making sure that you keep a right form? What are the things that you focus on to ensure that you have the right form and you're putting the tension in the right place?
I think it comes down to self-awareness. And this is hard for, I think, a lot of people who have been athletic throughout their life, myself included, to come to a place of acceptance of being a beginner again. Like when you have to, you've got to warm up with light weights first. You've got, there's other people at the gym and it might be, wow, okay, you're only lifting 5 pounds, but it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. And so you have to be self-aware and say, you know what, I'm going to use proper form. I'm going to use a good range of motion. And I'm training for me and my outcomes and my goals, not for someone else in the gym, not for anybody else online. And I'll tell you, Maxim, I am not immune. I'm not immune to this. I was just telling Coach Nick in the coaching program that I just set an all-time record, the heaviest weight I've ever lifted on the leg press. Which it was purely an ego thing for me, and I actually felt both of my quads on both legs tearing during that movement. Now they tore not in an injury way, but in the form that I felt it as it was happening. The weight was so much that as I brought the weight down, they were starting to tear to the point that it didn't matter how much I stretched in between sets. I was going to be sore for days and days and days, which I was. And luckily I didn't get injured, but I felt it right away. You can feel it sometimes. Even if you have warmed up, sometimes you do a hamstring exercise a little bit too fast or a little bit too deep, and on a walking lunge, like, oops, I felt something there.
Or you bounce at the bottom of it or something.
Yep. Or I've done it with my chest. I lifting as heavy as I possibly can. You've seen me lift some very heavy weights. We lifted chest together.
Yeah.
Right. But some of that was ego too, because when I was with you in the gym, at the world's most famous gym, I was trying to lift the most I'd ever lifted in my entire life, which I did. Barely, but I did. But that also, aggravated my chest probably for days afterwards. And so there's a self-awareness component that ego lifting can sometimes get the best of all of us, especially former athletes or current athletes. But we have to try to be aware of the long-lasting implications of that. Okay, so what if I did tear my quads, partially? And by the way, tears happen in all muscles through training, small tears. These are a little
Micro
bigger
tears,
ones.
yeah.
Then I can't train for a week, right? Or if I hurt my shoulder, then I can't train for a week. These are repercussions and consequences that are byproducts of I'm pushing myself too far because I've got the camera out and I'm trying to record my all-time best lift, or so I can post about it online, or for whatever other reason you're trying to, impress yourself or impress someone in the gym. There's almost always going to be a negative consequence, and I've even experienced that as recently as a week ago when I was sore for many, many days and luckily escaped injury when I felt my muscles being stretched a little bit too far with too much weight.
Yeah. It is a fine line, and you kind of have to start working out to kind of figure out what that line is for you. But I just want for the people listening, I think there's two reasons why most people will get injured. One is ego lifting, trying to lift a heavier weight, or not knowing the proper form. And obviously through this podcast, it'd be very hard to go over all the exercises in the form. So just for the people listening, I want you to know that on my YouTube channel, just my name, basically Maxime Sigouin, I have a playlist that has over about 100 exercise videos where I explain in depth how to do every single exercise. So it's just easier for you to go in there and pick the exercise that you want to learn how to do. For the ego lifting, I actually have a perfect story. A few days ago, I had played basketball for 2 hours and then I had a leg workout after, and I was doing power cleans. And someone came to me, and I have this big basketball goal and athletics and all that. And he's like, "Oh, you're only lifting this weight?" I was like, "Yes, I am. I'm not getting injured for you. I'm not going up in weight. I don't need to impress you." I was like, "I want my knees to be healthy. I want my hips to feel good. I want my back to feel good. I'm not going up in weight because you think it's light." So yeah, it's a reflection of don't get injured for someone else. Just do the ways that you can do with a good form, and you'll be able to see results. It's just, if you're trying to go too quick, too fast, you're increasing your chances of getting injured, and you're by all means not speeding up your results. Because you can work out really hard and lift heavy and eat terrible food after, you're still not moving forward. Yeah. Right. So just those little, again, consistency compounds. So those little actions, those little workouts that you're going to do every day, every 2 days, or every 3 days, that's what's going to make the difference, not you lifting heavy once, unless you're trying to test yourself, which again, that's a different conversation at that point. I love to talk about cool down and stretching post-workout. So I'll say two things. The cool down is tied to the warm up. We know that if we don't stretch after, we're a lot tighter for the next workout. So therefore the warm up becomes more important. I also know by fact that athletes are terrible at stretching post-workout. They hate it. That's why a lot of injuries happen. So do you want to talk a bit about, the importance of cooling down and kind of how you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely, Maxim. There's something called delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS. Many of us experience it. And you know what? We oftentimes think that our level of soreness is a reflection of how good our workout was.
Yeah.
They're often not related whatsoever. You could have done a terrible workout, goofing around on your phone the whole time and all that. But if you didn't stretch, or you didn't warm up properly, and you didn't cool down properly, you're going to be sore and think, "Oh, I got this great workout." Just like if you were to get up out of your chair right now and go sprint for 800 meters for half a mile, you're going to be very sore, and you're going to think, "Wow, I had this great workout." No, you almost injured yourself. And so
I couldn't do it. I need 20 minutes to warm up my knees, Robert.
yeah. And actually, I have a funny story about that too, where I used to be a very good long distance runner, but I was trying to keep up with a lot of really great long distance runners right after I had trained legs a day or two before and had severe delayed onset muscle soreness. And it felt like my legs weighed 200 pounds each. I could barely move. Mentally, I knew I was just as fast as these runners. I could not physically get my body to move. And that was over 20 years ago. And I think I still have dreams about it at night of just not being able to move, because I've actually experienced that myself. But what we want to do is reduce the likelihood of delayed onset muscle soreness setting in. How do we do that? Well, obviously a proper warm-up and good hydration and good nutrition and anti-inflammatory foods and stretching throughout the workout, and the types of stretches you talked about: range of motion, arm circles, ankle circles, moving your body around, just being active in between sets, from squatting to a standing position, swinging your arms around. All that's important. But the cool down aspect is important too, because imagine just like jumping out of my chair and going for a sprint. Also imagine doing a hard workout and then just getting in your car and sitting and driving back home, and your muscles just getting tight again and bundled up and inflamed and all this, because you just stop dramatically without, again, getting that circulation going through walking and stretching and range of motion and all of that. And it's something a lot of us overlook, myself included, but you put that in your program, or at least in my program in Fit Vegan Coaching. There's a 5-minute
everyone
stretching. There's a 5-minute stretching routine that I would normally never do, because it's not something that I'm conscious of, and I'm pretty good at stretching throughout the workout and all of that. But when it's part of a routine and part of a structure, it's another box to check. And so it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I should do a bit more stretching here. And what I found is that I can have some of the best workouts I've ever had and actually not feel sore afterwards, even though I pushed myself so hard and I know I'm progressing. I know I'm adapting, and I know my recovery is so good from the nutrition and the sleep and the rest, but I'm not sore. Why? Because I took the time to cool down and stretch afterwards. And I especially do that with lower body exercises. The muscles are so big, glutes, quads, hamstrings, and the soreness is so great. I mean, where you can barely sit down in a chair or on a toilet, that you want to make sure you stretch afterwards to just really cool down. And I even go for a walk afterwards too. It's another way to get more steps in, and it's a way to just keep circulation going and reduce that soreness that we used to wear as a badge of honor, but now we know is actually slowing down our progress in a lot of ways, because now we can't train the next day or the next day because soreness and damaged muscle tissue prevents us from doing so. So for me, that's what that's where I attribute the benefit of stretching and cool down in the overall recovery process.
Yeah, and for people to understand, with DOM, so delayed onset muscle soreness, doesn't necessarily happen the day after your workout. It's somehow always 2 days after your workout. Whereas like the next day after a leg workout, you're like, I feel fine, this is great. And then the next day you're like, I can't get out of bed. What is happening to me? So usually it's 2 days. So don't get too cocky one day after your workout. Usually it's 2 days after. But there's an element I want people to understand. So when you're strength training, you're doing little micro tears in your muscle tissue. And then when they're repairing, they're repairing to be a little bit bigger, but also a little bit tighter. And so what happens when you continuously work out and don't stretch is you're just getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. That's why I see a lot of people that exercise that have really bad posture because their chest is really tight, right? Or they just kind of, the limbs kind of go like this because their biceps are really tight, their chest is really tight, their back is really tight. So stretching post-workout is you kind of elongating the muscle so that you can have that range of motion back. Because if you don't, you slowly over time will lose that range of motion. Everyone knows that guy at the gym that walks around like a turtle because his chest is so tight that his shoulders are in. And so, again, you're elongating the muscle. That's going to help you have great posture, great mobility, great range of motion. Because even if you warm up, but you have a shortened range of motion and you do some bench press, you can tear something. Or squat, right? You can warm up your squat, but if your hips are really, really, really tight, your ankles are really, really tight, and your hamstrings are tight, you're probably going to hurt yourself. So those two components go hand in hand together to reduce the amount of injury. Now, I know it sounds like Robert and I are putting this like big red alert on like strength training of like, do this or else you get hurt. But there's so many positive benefits. It's just about preparation after the workout as a forms of cool down for the next workout, and then preparation before to do the strength training session, which only brings you positives. There's only upsides to strength training, right? There's no downside to strength training if you do it well. So I just want to kind of like throw that in because, yeah, some people have really bad posture because of they're not stretching after, and everyone ends up getting injured. As a means to kind of wrap up the whole conversation of strength training and body composition, what are some pieces of advice that you'd like to share with the listeners, Robert, in your 30 plus years of exercising and of being in the vegan fitness industry? What are some keys to success you'd like to pass off?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity today, Maxime, and to the NHA and all the great work that you both are doing. I appreciate this opportunity, and it's fun to have this conversation and talk about something that's been so integrated into my life since I was a teenager. This is all I've known since I was 15 years old, as being a plant-based athlete. That's all I've known. And so for me, what I really want to leave the audience with today is this idea that you can connect the dots. That if you desire to burn fat or build muscle or gain confidence or increase your endurance or pursue something you've always wanted to but never thought you could, like run a marathon or compete in a strength sport or whatever that is, to set a specific goal, understand why you care about it. So make sure that you're not one of those New Year's resolutions statistics of giving up when you were just about to get to a breakthrough. To have some sort of vision for what you want to accomplish. If you can create this vision, and I know it's easy for me to say because I've done it, but I really did. When I was a 120 pound long distance runner, I had visions of someday getting bigger and stronger, someday being a bodybuilder, someday being a champion bodybuilder. And I just worked at it step after step after step. And it took time, it took patience, it took consistency, but it worked. And I did the same for running, and I did the same for many other things. And so what I can leave you with today is that if you create a system, a structure, a routine that is designed to produce results, and you stick with it, and you don't give up, and you keep after it, and you show up with meaning and purpose behind it, you'll eventually get there, or you'll get as close as you've ever been to it. And it's one of the greatest feelings in the world to have control over something as intimate as our own bodies, and be able to control our ability to lose weight and drop body fat and build muscle and improve our longevity. I mean, is there anything more powerful than having a vote, having a say in your own health, wellness, fitness, and longevity? I'm not so sure there's anything better than that. And when you do show up with intention, and that includes lifting weights or body weight exercises or pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, and you do that enough days in a row, that becomes a reflection of who you are. You're someone who works out. You're someone who follows through. You're someone who achieves goals. You're someone who inspires others. You're someone who says, yes, I can. You're someone who believes in yourself. You're someone who writes your own story and tells the next chapter in your book, in your life. And that is a very, very powerful thing. And to not worry about what others are doing or what others are saying about your capabilities. They're not you. They don't know your goals. They don't know your work ethic. They don't know your reasons behind doing what you're doing. You do. And if you honor that by showing up with consistency and putting in the work, the benefits are endless. And it's something I wish for everybody, regardless of your age, regardless of your past fitness background, regardless of whether goals worked out or didn't work out before for you. This is time to begin anew, become a beginner again, and that's okay. I'm a beginner again every time I try something new, a new sport, a new physical activity, a new interest, and I allow myself to be a beginner and to learn and to absorb and to digest and then give it what I've got and improve. And that's where the joy comes from. And that's where the motivation comes from. And that's what makes it so much easier to be consistent when you see results. So give yourself time, give yourself grace, give yourself compassion, and move forward in the direction of your dreams, whatever they may be.
Beautifully said. Right? You've heard this before. You can't fail if you don't quit. Right? That's how you became a champion bodybuilder. That's how you became a New York Times bestselling author. You can't fail if you don't quit. Which, by the way, for the people listening, I'm sure they already noticed. But I see on the shelf behind you your book, The Plant-Based Athlete, The Impactful Vegan. I'd love for people to check those out. 2 incredible books. Robert's on a great mission, great author, great friend. So I'm sure we'll put all the links down below for Robert. But Robert, I want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast and recording with me. Thank you very much for everyone for listening, and we will see you all in the next episode.